Life's too short to drive boring cars.
Look at this beautiful used Mercedes C300 parked right behind me here. Makes a person wonder why everybody doesn't buy a slightly used Mercedes. You can buy a great selection of different cars, from sedans, coupes, convertibles, as well as different engines from 4-cylinder turbos, V6s, V8s, and V12 engines. There's even cars for every single budget, especially if you're buying a used one. Now, while a brand new Mercedes can be very expensive and very daunting, there's a variety of reasons why you would buy a used one. But even though buying a used Mercedes represents phenomenal value, there are a host of reasons why you may want to avoid. I'm going to share that list, and so hopefully you can make the right choice to prevent yourself wasting your money. Let's get into it now. So the first reason you may not want to buy a used Mercedes, or slightly used, this one's a 2018, now we're in 2022, is cars going on 4 years of age. What that means is heavy depreciation. Now, of course, buying brand new Mercedes means the ultimate in depreciation, but nobody suffers the level of depreciation that this brand does right here, BMW. They are definitely kings of depreciation. Either way, a Mercedes Benz does suffer depreciation, and to the tune of about 40 to 50% of the value is gone in the first 5 years. So that likely means if you buy a 2 or 3 year old Mercedes, you're still going to continue to lose money year on year for the next 3 or 4 years. Now, of course, the best value comes in buying a car that's 5 to 6 years old, but then you have no warranty. So be careful with that. And also, if you're going to buy a slightly older Mercedes, I would suggest getting a certified pre-owned warranty from the dealer that's going to likely protect your wallet and your investment for the next 2 to 3 years beyond. Now, the next reason why you may not want to buy a used Mercedes, especially if you didn't get that certified pre-owned warranty, is out of warranty service costs or repair costs. Now, these modern day luxury cars are full of technology, and it's literally these modules that can cost you $500 or $1,000 a pop. Let's also not forget some of the mechanical components within these vehicles, such as everything that you can get under the hood. There's so many cooling parts and components. We've got intercoolers, we've got turbochargers down here, and when a turbo blows, as you see, you can notice it down there, a turbo can cost you a lot of money, upwards from $2,500, $3,000 or more, parts and labor all in, to get a turbocharger replaced. And even worse, if you bought this car and it's, say, 5 years old and it's worth half of its original value now, let's say that car's worth 20 grand and you got to put in $5,000 in repairs, that's 25% of its retail price at that time. Starts to get very expensive, right? How about other electronic parts such as these fancy MMI systems? They would cost a fortune. If this thing goes, and they do, this is going to cost you a lot of money out of pocket. Same thing with a lot of modern day dashboards today. A lot of these are typically digital displays nowadays, and if any of that goes, that's going to cost you a small arm and 3 legs. So basically, any out of service maintenance costs or repairs that you didn't anticipate is a pretty good reason in my books to avoid a used car. So the next reason you may not want to buy a used Mercedes is because naturally there's costly maintenance that goes into these vehicles. Now, that goes without saying. Doesn't matter whether you're driving a Mercedes or whether you're driving a BMW, they're all going to cost you a significant amount of money out of your pocket. Now, driving an old pickup truck like this is going to cost you maintenance too. Every single vehicle costs you maintenance, but a Mercedes is in fact a luxury vehicle, and they start treating it as such. Now, what that means is there's typically a couple of different arrangements for Mercedes. They'll usually have an alternating and an A and a B service, and you can generally expect to pay anywhere from $1,000, $1,500 alternating per year. So don't even think about, well, I can skip or get through year on year and maybe minimize. No. If you start skipping maintenance, A, it's going to have an impact on the reliability of the vehicle, and B, it's going to have a real impact on resale. If you've skipped maintenance, the next owner doesn't want to have anything to do with that car. Now, the next reason why you may not want to buy a used Mercedes is the natural selection of used parts or parts availability. You generally can't get a lot of it, especially nowadays. We have the supply chain concerns. Obviously, across the globe, it's taking a lot longer to get that replacement fender or replacement turbocharger or that specialty part on that car. But let's take a look at some of the unique parts on a Mercedes. Look at these beautiful headlights. Look, you've got this wonderful LED strip. What if something happened to that and you had to get a new headlight assembly? How long do you think that's going to take? What if you needed a new grille? What if something happened here? Maybe, a rock hit that or a bird flew through your grill. How long would it take to get a new replacement grill? Or that front spoiler that sits very, very low and it's aggressive, it'd be pretty easy to damage that, bumping that up to a roadside curb. So that would be a difficult part to get, and you'd likely have to wait some time to get a replacement. How about these factory wheels? That's going to be a little bit of an add-on for time delay, as well as mirrors. Very specialty. There's no Pep Boy action there. Or these fancy little door handles. You're not going to find those parts at Pick Your Part, I guarantee you. There's other parts as well, like look at these rear tail lights. That's also a unique piece. Big LEDs. Mercedes with the built-in incorporated camera. You're not going to find those on the shelf at Pep Boys or Canadian Tire. What if you need some kind of part for your glass panel on top here? Guaranteed, that's going to take a long lead time as well. We won't even get into all the mechanical parts at limited accessibility. Clearly it's a Mercedes, Canadian Tire, Pep Boys, Walmart. None of these places are going to carry anything for these. They're half the time now you can't even find a replacement light bulb for a car like this at a lot of those places. Or even a set of brake pads often is hard to come by, let alone anything more specific. So parts availability likely is going to be longer lead times and more costly to purchase. You also won't save money on jobber parts or used parts at a wrecker, because again, rarely will you find a used one like this sitting at the auto wrecker waiting to grab its spare pieces. And the next reason why you may not want to buy a used Mercedes is because you just need too much specialized tools and equipment. And obviously the technicians go to school, take a lot of extra training to learn how to work on these cars. Now, while there's a lot of do-it-yourself mechanics, and there's even independent shops now that are starting to learn these cars, obviously there's probably some in your area. The point of the matter is you still need specialized tools, they still need specialized training, and the do-it-yourselfer mechanic, such as myself, are finding less and less opportunities to do your own work because the cars are getting more complex, there's more electronics, more technology, and without a plug-in scanner and specialized test equipment, a lot of times you can't even properly diagnose things without starting to become a Ford mechanic and start swapping parts out randomly. You want another reason why you maybe shouldn't buy a used Mercedes? Well, how about the fact that there's overcomplicated technology and systems on board that a lot of people, A, can't fix, and even if you could, B, it's going to cost you a crap ton of money to sort it out. Now, while this is a C-Class, this is a standard suspension setup. However, if you got into an S-Class and you have air ride suspension on the back, those airbags fail, the compressor fails, the entire air system itself can fail, and it gets very costly. What you'll wind up seeing is a lot of times those cars sitting on their ass on the ground, particularly at the back end. That gives it away that there's a leak in the system. Those are expensive and they fail regularly. There are retrofits for it. However, the fact of the matter is a lot of these complicated systems end up costing you a lot of money out of your pocket, even when you least expect it and the last thing you want to worry about. It just happens. It's not just air ride suspensions, it's also turbochargers on most cars nowadays. Mercedes is no different. Often now you have a turbo 4-cylinder engine here, and the problem with that is when turbos go, they get expensive. And it's that complicated system also adds extra plumbing and hardware to the car that means potentials for failure, as well as accelerated life deterioration of that engine. Guaranteed that engine will not last as long as a naturally aspirated lump that you typically find in most V6 Lexus cars, for example. And with Mercedes using turbo 4-cylinders, turbo V6s, twin turbo V8s, as you move up the range, the complexity just becomes far more increased and far more costly in the long run. Also, can't forget all the electronics on the dashboard, and as well some of the extra safety features that you might find in Mercedes that you may not find in a Honda. Those things eventually can fail, and they often do, particularly with some age. 5, 6, 7 years down the road, that's when some of these problem areas start to rear their ugly faces. And so when there's failures with some of the high technology items within these vehicles, guaranteed you're going to pay through the nose. And there's areas that you wouldn't even dream of. For example, right there, you'll notice you've got that fancy piece. When those die, they're going to cost you probably $1,000, $1,500 for that. If the gauge cluster goes, that's also going to be a couple $1,000s for sure. If you have any of the center console go, and they can, it's no different than any other piece of electronic or technology, that's going to cost you a significant amount of money. How about any of these other controls? A switch fails, a button fails. Any of that extra tech that this car has that a standard Honda or Toyota has may end up costing you a lot more money in the long run. What about that headlight we spoke of? LED, these fancy projectors, all these other cute little lights on top. When something goes, and eventually one of these lights may stop working at some point, even though they're not particularly unreliable, if they stop working, the law states you have to have all your lights working. When you get in your car, you should be checking all your lights and your tires and your seatbelt, and all that should be functioning. But if you drive away and your headlight's not working, a police officer may pull you over, give you a ticket. The point of the matter is, even a simple thing like a light that stops working may become a serious inconvenience and dollars out of your pocket, not only to pay a ticket from the cop, but as well to fix that light. So the day of driving a simple vehicle like this, simple lights with a standard little bulb in there, those days are gone. Mercedes has you beat with these fancy lights. But there's another really compelling reason why you don't necessarily want to buy a used Mercedes. For me, I personally like the used Mercedes. That's why we bought this one. It's because the prestige, it drives nice, it feels nice. And you know what? As long as you can afford it, it fits well within your budget, and you're not going to be trapped by any of the previous conversations that I just mentioned, then why not? Mercedes is a great place to start. However, another great compelling reason for not buying a used Mercedes is that there's some far more reliable options on the marketplace. If you in fact want a luxury car, you can drive a car that looks similar to this with improved reliability as well as not quite as aggressive depreciation. And what you'll find there is typically in a Lexus. A car like this, it's one of its competitors, could be the Lexus IS, for example, is a great option. Get an IS 350 and it's a naturally aspirated V6, 3.5 liters, 311 horsepower, actually has more power than this car. Similar price tag, depreciation isn't as hard as it is in this car, and ultimately that car will run for 20 years with minimal problems. Acura is another great option. They have some great cars out there as well. But then of course there's other competitors that might be equal to Mercedes in terms of reliability or lack thereof. You might look at a BMW 3 Series, a Jaguar XE, or an Audi A4 for example. But ultimately, Lexus and Acura would be the safest bets. And with all of that said, be sure to click on that video. You're going to love it. The most reliable luxury cars of today. Hope to see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.